Hi, good afternoon, and welcome to Borough President Adams' Uniform Land Use Review Procedure Public Hearing. My name is Jeff Lowell. I'm the Policy Director for the Brooklyn Borough President. I'm joined tonight by our Director of Land Use, Richard Barak, our Chief of Staff, Ryan Lynch, and our Land Use Coordinator, Ina Gusenfeld. As the Governor's emergency order authorizing virtual public meetings was rescinded on June 25th, the Borough President's Office has resumed in-person hearings in accordance with the Open Meetings Law. Tonight, we are conducting these proceedings simultaneously at Borough Hall and remotely via WebEx. This hearing is being recorded to comply with the public law for transparency and will be available on Borough President Adams' One Brooklyn channel on YouTube. We will provide and repeat instructions for live and virtual testimony. Brooklyn Borough Hall will be open all evening to those who wish to speak or listen to the hearing. To testify in person, you must complete a speaker slip and be in the courtroom when your name is called. Remarks will be limited to 2 minutes. After providing testimony, you will be asked to go to the community room where you can stay and listen to other speakers. Please note that face masks must be worn at all times inside Borough Hall. Online viewers may join the hearing via the link and password on the following slide. To testify, please message your request to all panelists in the WebEx chat. Remarks will be limited to 2 minutes. Additional comments and longer testimony may be sent to askeric@brooklynbp.nyc.gov. for Borough President Adams' consideration. Please call the item and let us begin.
Calendar item number 1, 210052 HAK, 210053 PPK, 210177 ZMK, N210178 ZRK, 210179 MMK, 210180 MMK.
Applications submitted by the New York City Department of City Planning, together with the New York City Department of Housing Preservation and Development, the New York City Department of Parks and Recreation, and the New York City Department of Citywide Administrative Services for land use actions stemming from the Gowanus Neighborhood Plan. The proposal covers an 82-block area of the Gowanus neighborhood, generally bounded by Bond, Hoyt, and Smith Streets, 3rd and 4th Avenues, Huntington, 3rd, 7th, and 15th Streets, and Warren, Baltic, and Pacific Streets in Brooklyn Community Districts 2 and 6. The plan would create more housing, including permanently affordable housing, promote a diverse mix of compatible uses, encourage economic development and employment opportunities, and expand community resources such as parks and schools. It would also support the remediation of the Gowanus Canal and its uplands, while building future resiliency and sustainability. The proposed actions would yield a projected 8,000 new apartments, of which approximately 3,000 would be affordable, including nearly 1,000 city-sponsored units. In order to facilitate and accommodate this growth, the plan proposes to remediate brownfield sites, elevate portions of the shoreline to prepare for future sea level rise, and allow development to meet flood-resilient design standards, invest in new affordable housing, create new community and cultural resources, including a potential school and 1.5-acre park on city-owned land, improve and invest in area streetscapes and connectivity, and improve existing parks and cultural spaces. To implement the plan, the applicant agencies are requesting the following approvals: zoning map amendments to change existing low-density light manufacturing and commercial districts to mid to high-density MX, residential, commercial, and light manufacturing districts along the canal and major corridors, and to contextual mid-density residential and light manufacturing districts along side streets. Zoning text amendments to establish the special Gowanus mixed-use district, create the Gowanus waterfront access plan, replace the special enhanced commercial district, and apply mandatory inclusionary housing within the rezoning area. Designation of city-owned land on Block 471, lots 1 and 100, the Gowanus Green Development Site, as an urban development action area. Approval of the project, the Gowanus Green Development, as an urban action development action area project, and disposition approval to facilitate a mixed-use development with 950 affordable housing units and 6 new buildings ranging from 5 to 28 stories. The Gowanus Green Development Site would include a variety of non-residential uses, including ground floor commercial and community facility spaces, a site for a potential school, new mapped streets, and a 1.5-acre public park that would remain under city ownership. In a related application, the city is also seeking acquisition approval for the development of a future public park. Disposition of city-owned property at 276 4th Avenue, Block 456, Lot 29, between Carroll Street and First Street, pursuant to the proposed zoning. The parcel is currently zoned M1-2 and used as an MTA New York City Transit substation, which would remain active on the site. Concurrent related city map changes to map and acquire new parkland, map new streets, demap segments of streets, remove a public place designation to facilitate an affordable housing mixed-use development on a city-owned site. Community Board 6 voted to approve this application with conditions on June 23rd, 2021.
Should also note, Board 2 disapproved.
And Community Board 2 disapproved the application.
At this point, the Department of City Planning will give a short overview of the public process leading up to this application.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. I'm glad when technology works for us. Thank you. Let me see. Let's start my video, make it a little bit more personal. So thank you to the Brooklyn Borough Presidents and also to the BP staff for their dedication and also nimbleness during these unique circumstances. We'll try to keep this short. We are here today after decades of deliberation and community planning processes that have resulted in no action in this neighborhood. Since the 60s, there have been years of debate about how the neighborhood should or shouldn't change, how to clean up the canal, brownfields in a coordinated way. And during this time, the world has changed. It's moved on drastically. There have been major environmental, economic, and social and technological events and shifts that have rapidly reshaped what it means to find a home, to find a job, to raise or not raise a family. Essentially, the face of what it means to live a good life has changed. And what we know is that the status quo is not what the community wants, and years of no action has left brownfields to sit and contamination to spread, while a housing crisis explodes and climate change has made us more vulnerable and less resilient. So within that context, an increasingly volatile, uncertain, and changing world, the community requested a neighborhood study. And what we set out to solve for when we launched our engagement and outreach process in October of 2016. So to get from we have these challenges to what we want what we want the future to be like and how we can shape it, we asked the community how we should approach studying Gowanus, and what resulted was a 4+ year process. We held numerous meetings, both large and small. We also held an open call for 5 working groups that committed their time for over 6 months to meet and do deep dives on various topics. We met and heard from NYCHA Tenant Association meetings whenever they met. And we came out to community events to share updates and get input and feedback from pop-up events. We also piloted our first online engagement tool to not only get input from a wider audience, but also to share information and archive documents from the working group process. And of course, we've consistently worked with Community Board 6, including I think over 15, maybe now 20 meetings where we've shared info, solicited input, and have had really good, messy sometimes, and healthy dialogues and conversations. So this is a public hearing on the Gowanus Neighborhood Plan, and of course we are here to hear from the public and not from me. So that's it from me. I will say if you want more information on the neighborhood plan, to go to newyorkcity.gov or nyc.gov/Gowanus. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now call speakers 5 at a time for in-person and virtual testimony. Remarks will be limited to 2 minutes.
Okay, we will begin with our first slate of speakers, which is people who are presently in this courtroom. Our first speaker is Alicia Boyd, followed by Madeline Britt, Andrea Parker, Marissa Williams, and Pierce Hilly.
Hi, my name is Alicia Boyd, and I am a political activist. I represent MTOP, the Movement to Protect the People, and Black Flower Lovers Against Corruption. I used to live in Gowanus years ago when I was a younger woman with less grays. And so I'm very familiar with the community. I lived there for about 20 years. One of the things, as a political activist since 2014, really pushing against district-wide rezonings when the City Planning Commissioner comes into the community and does all of these visioning sessions, and they take all the little photographs, and then they produce a plan that does not reflect what the community wanted or said or did, which is all just bullshit. And then, of course, they push the plan into the community and they say this. Oh, that's not my time, is it? Well, we'll wait until that's over. I expect to get a couple of seconds because of that. Affordable for who? Well, we'll wait. I'll wait. I know there's an alert. Are we finished? Okay, great. So you're going to hear a lot of people come up and tell you about, oh, the affordable housing that this is going to create. But the question is, affordable for who? And this is what people in Black communities all over New York City has been saying, because the MIH program, Whoopie-Doo, that's been in effect since 2016, has not produced one apartment that's affordable for me or for Max. There's been no low to moderate income apartments that have been underneath the affordable category. And why is that? Well, because they have choices. Developers have choices. And those choices range from low to moderate to high end. And they always pick the high end because the city doesn't give a and they just let it happen. So, as people will parade up here and tell you what a great program this is and how much affordable housing is going to be created, I can tell you that there will be no affordable housing for the low to moderate income people, especially considering that those are the people who are homeless. Those are the people that tend to look like me and Max. And so this is the scam that constantly is played in every rezoning that has happened in this city since the MIH program came into effect in 2016. So my question to you is, as these people come and tell you about all the affordable housing that they're so optimistic that you're gonna get, if you do the same thing underneath the same conditions, what makes you think you're gonna get a different result? It's science, people, it's facts. You do the same thing, you get the same result. So what this is just a giveaway to developers. They give some nonprofits a little bit of money so the nonprofits can come up here and say, yeah, yeah, yeah. But at the end of the day, it's because developers are running this city. And I just want to note that your borough president is not here present, because what is he doing? Or where is he? Is he in New Jersey? Or is he upstairs? Because he doesn't even enough to even be present.
Thank you, Ms. Boyd.
Thank you. That's it for me.
Okay, we ask that you please refrain from clapping during or between testimonies. Our next speaker is Madeline Britt.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of the Gowanus Neighborhood Plan. My name is Madeline Britt, and I'm a policy analyst at the Citizens Housing and Planning Council. CHPC is a nonprofit organization dedicated to addressing the city's housing and planning needs. New York City is in a housing crisis. On any given night, there are over 50,000 New Yorkers experiencing homelessness. Nearly half of our residents are rent-burdened, many severely, with limited access to affordable housing opportunities in amenity-rich neighborhoods. There is a clear need for expanding access to affordable housing in Brooklyn. Borough residents face immense challenges as rising housing costs threaten to displace long-term residents. In less than a decade, the Brooklyn median rent increased by nearly 20%, while 1 in 5 Brooklyn residents are in poverty. Residents of Gowanus houses and Wyckoff Gardens are living with unacceptable living conditions due to decades of disinvestment in NYCHA. Meanwhile, higher income, majority white neighborhoods act as impediments to inclusionary development, further contributing to segregation in Brooklyn. The proposed Gowanus rezoning is integral to meeting the housing needs of Brooklyn residents, with 3,000 new affordable units expected to be built. Near 11 different train lines, the neighborhood is more transit accessible than any other rezoning under this administration. Gowanus also has a high concentration of job opportunities with over 14,000 jobs per square mile. Quality of life and access to services contributes to the neighborhood's above average life expectancy, which is also greater than the borough and citywide average. As we've heard today and throughout the ULURP process, amenity-rich neighborhoods are uniquely suited to accommodate more dense development. Despite its access to services and transit, the neighborhood is less dense in population than any other area upzoned for more affordable housing. With this rezoning, Brooklyn residents have the opportunity to truly commit to addressing systemic inequality through the expansion of affordable housing development in Gowanus. Over the course of many community engagement events and we have seen a spike in virtual participation, so we are fully support of the Gowanus rezoning and equality of life for all New Yorkers. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Andrea Parker.
Hi. Thanks for having me here today, and it's good to be in person. I haven't been in a government building for about a year. Trying not to use my time. Okay. I am Andrea Parker, Executive Director of Gowanus Canal Conservancy. We are a proud member of the Gowanus Neighborhood Coalition for Justice, and we will not support the rezoning unless our top 3 demands are met. And that is full capital funding for local NYCHA developments, Gowanus and Wyckoff, net zero CSO, and the creation of a task force to hold the city and all parties accountable for commitments made through the rezoning process. I'd like to use my time to discuss the need for the city to make really clear commitments to investing in neighborhood open space. As everyone who knows the neighborhood knows, Gowanus is severely lacking in both parks and trees. This is particularly painful on a hot day like today. As the city's analysis shows, the proposed rezoning will add critical open space to the neighborhood, including public waterfronts, a new park, and over 500 new street trees. However, this increased open space will still be a fraction of the ratio the city recommends, and it's particularly low on active spaces that are critical to supporting a more residential neighborhood. Additionally, this ratio relies on new parks that are not yet created. We have seen in too many prior rezonings, including in Brooklyn, that the city promises open space, but does not commit to a firm timeline and funding for it. The recent growth in adjacent neighborhoods has also not helped. As the Borough President has noted, the downtown Brooklyn rezoning underestimated residential population growth, and thus the city did not invest in sufficient community infrastructure, including open space, as well as school seats, libraries, and community facilities. We can't allow the same mistakes here. The city must commit in the points of agreement to creating and supporting creation of more open space in the immediate neighborhood, as well as investing in existing open spaces. This should include capital commitments and timelines for planned parks, including at the head of the canal and public place, additional commitments to new open space, renovations and improvements to ensure that existing open spaces can support a growing population, and modifications to the waterfront access plan. We'll be following up with more detailed comments, and thank you for this time.
Our next speaker is Marissa Williams.
You don't want to speak? No. Okay.
No. Our next speaker is Pierce Hilly.
Good evening. My name is Pierce Hilly. I'm here on behalf of my union, 32BJ, and the 85,000 building service workers 32BJ represents in New York City to express our support for this rezoning. 32BJ is pleased that many of the developers in the rezoning area have made a credible commitments to the prevailing wage for the future building service workers at their sites. The creation of good jobs like mine will mean that working families will be able to afford to live in this area. It will also give working families stability and security. I know this because my job that pays the prevailing wage has been a positive impact on my quality of my life and my future. 32BJ supports responsible developers who invest in the communities where they build. This commitment is an investment in the community by providing wages and benefits that give working families opportunity for upward mobility and security. We support the rezoning and we are confident that many of the developers will be responsible employers and make a positive impact on the community. For these reasons, we respectfully urge you to approve this rezoning. Thank you. On behalf of the New York City 32BJ membership, we support this rezoning. Good night.
Okay, we will now hear from our next slate of speakers who will be joining us via WebEx. Our first speaker is Cassandra Dillenberger.
My name is Casey Dillenberger. I'm a manager of 98 4th Street Development Group LLC and 413 Bond Street LLC. We own 2 properties in the rezoning area, 98 4th Street located along Bond Street in the canal, and 413 Bond Street, an irregular L-shaped lot between 3rd Street and 4th Street with frontage on the canal. 98 4th Street is home to 67 small businesses with over 300 workers, including furniture makers, jewelry makers, set designers, and photographers. 413 Bond Street has approved plans for development for these very same uses. As property owners, we've been intentional about providing spaces for the locally owned creative businesses that have become synonymous with the Gowanus neighborhood. Gowanus rezoning raises 2 specific issues that undermine our ability to develop and retain such uses on our sites. 1, the proposed visual corridor and upland connection mid-block between Bond Street and the canal. And 2, the proposed waterfront yard and shore public walkway requirements. These regulations would make redevelopment of our site at 413 Bond Street infeasible, even with the proposed M14 zoning designation. The proposed visual corridor requires an unobstructed area of at least 50 feet along the eastern boundary, and the proposed waterfront yard requires an unobstructed area of at least 30 feet along the shoreline. Together, these regulations would drastically reduce our usable lot area by approximately 40%. This result is inconsistent with the city's stated objective to support existing clusters of economic activity and promote development of new job-generating uses. If the city believes that the upland connection and visual corridor are necessary in this location, we would strongly encourage them to utilize adjacent sites that are proposed to be rezoned for residential uses and have more flexible floor plates. We ask that the Borough Presidents support our request to make this small but specific modification to the proposed zoning text to help protect the future of industrial use and manufacturing businesses in Gowanus. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today.
Okay, our next speaker is David Cutz.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please proceed.
Okay. Yes. Hi. I'm David Cutz, the president of Arts Gowanus and an artist in the community. Arts Gowanus staunchly supports GNCJ's top 3 demands and will not support the rezoning unless they're met. Within the rezoning documents, the term arts and artist appears over 200 times. In Chapter 1, it states, and I quote, "Former loft buildings have been reused and converted to space for artist studios, a trend that has led to property and reinvestment and spurred employment growth." Arts Gowanus has reviewed the list of artists that participated in our 2019 Open Studio event. 217 artists had a studio in the area, studied in the DEIS. These artists will be directly affected by the rezoning, but the DCP has neither studied this group nor provides for any mitigation. The zoning text includes the unique 0.3 FAR for the Gowanus mix, but there's no requirement that developers take advantage of this bonus, nor are there any provisions to assure artists will be able to afford it if built. Will we permit this rezoning to dislocate artists yet again? It's time for a new and better way to assure our creative community can survive. And to that end, we are negotiating an agreement that will provide affordable and sustainable artist workspaces. However, this agreement is not yet realized. If Arts Gowanus can achieve its goal with a fair agreement with the GNCJ caveats, Arts Gowanus will support this rezoning initiative. However, Arts Gowanus insists that the Borough President and the New York City Council not approve the Gowanus neighborhood plan without adequate protections for the creative community that helped make this neighborhood so valuable to the developers and viable for this rezoning initiative. Thank you for this opportunity.
Our next speaker is Sarah Gronim.
Hi, my name is Sarah Gronim. I belong to 350 Brooklyn, a 3,000-member local climate organization, which in turn is honored to be a member of the Gowanus Neighborhood Coalition for Justice. 350 Brooklyn and GNCJ will support rezoning for the Gowanus neighborhood only if there is full capital funding for the local NYCHA developments, no new combined sewer overflows in the canal, and the creation of a Gowanus zoning commitment task force. If the COVID-19 pandemic has taught us nothing else, it has shown us that right now, in public health emergencies, low-income people and people of color are hit first and worst. And right now, the massive heat wave in the Pacific Northwest and the severe drought in the Southwest are demonstrating without any doubt that the climate crisis is upon us. New York City has a duty to protect each and every New Yorker from its impact. The flooding and storm surges that overwhelm our sewer systems, the heat waves that threaten our elders and our children. Like COVID-19, the climate crisis is a public health crisis, and any rezoning plan must be directed at protecting current residents and mitigating the impact of that crisis. I'll speak to only one of our demands. Right now, the NYCHA houses are some of the most valuable housing in the city, with 1 of every 15 New Yorkers living in these affordable apartments. These buildings must be fully upgraded and fully maintained so that they are healthy, safe spaces that are resilient in the face of extreme heat and extreme storms. The neighborhood itself needs more street trees and parks that are guaranteed that will counter the heat island effect, soak up rainwater, and provide respite for neighborhood residents. Again, 350 Brooklyn and GNCJ support rezoning for the Gowanus neighborhood only if there is full capital funding for the local NYCHA development, no new combined sewer overflows in the canal, and the creation of a Gowanus zoning commitment task force. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Amy Matzny. Okay, we will now move on to Diana Gruberg.
Good afternoon. My name is Diana Gruberg. I'm the Landscape Director of Gowanus Canal Conservancy. And as others have stated before, we're a proud member of Gowanus Neighborhood Coalition for Justice, and we will not support the rezoning unless our top 3 demands are met, which are full capital funding for local NYCHA developments, net zero CSO, and the creation of a task force to hold the city and all parties accountable for commitments made through the rezoning process. For the past 5 years, I've been working to advocate and care for green spaces in Gowanus, with a firm belief that it is sustained long-term maintenance and programming that truly bring our public realm to life and keep it accessible to all. The Gowanus rezoning will add critical open space on private and public land. Private developers will be required to construct and maintain about 4 acres of public waterfront space, but they have no mandate to provide community-based programming to ensure that these spaces meet community needs. At the same time, proposed city-owned public spaces lack funding for maintenance and programming entirely. With major cuts in the New York City general budget, including a 14% decrease for the Parks Department last year, we truly need creative solutions to ensure that our public realm is maintained, programmed, and accessible. During COVID, we saw the impacts of budget cuts on our Brooklyn parks, with increased usership at the same time as Borough Park staff became increasingly stretched thin from a state where they're already stretched thin. Yet it also became clear that our parks are our lifelines, essential green space that every New Yorker needs to thrive. So as a condition of ULURP, the city must commit to work with local stakeholders on the creation of a parks improvement district using the bid model that would tax new development to fund programming and maintenance of parks and public space. The neighborhood plan has potential to create a vibrant public realm that is accessible and welcoming to all, but it will not happen unless the city commits to support the creation of a parks improvement district for the long term. We will be following up with extensive written comments and stand with the Gowanus Neighborhood Coalition for Justice and the community to fight for a more just and green neighborhood for all. Thank you.
Okay, is Amy available to speak?
Can you hear me?
Yes, please proceed.
Great, sorry about that. I'm Amy Matzny, Watershed Senior Planner for Gowanus Canal Conservancy. We are a proud member of the Gowanus Neighborhood Coalition for Justice, and we will not support the rezoning unless our top 3 demands are met: full capital funding for NYCHA, net zero CSO, and the creation of a task force to hold the city and all parties accountable for commitments made through the rezoning process. Today, I want to discuss the need for investment in infrastructure that will improve water quality in the Gowanus Canal and reduce neighborhood flooding. Combined sewage overflow, or CSO, is the greatest source of ongoing pollution to the canal. The overloaded sewer system discharges about 360 million gallons of raw sewage and polluted runoff into the canal each year. To ensure that new development does not increase pollution, we demand a net zero CSO rezoning. The environmental impact statement shows an outcome better than net zero CSO, reducing volume by 5 million gallons per year with the forthcoming unified stormwater rule in place. Absent this new rule, the city concedes that CSO would increase by 3 million gallons. To ensure our demand is met, the new rule must be in effect prior to the first site sewer connection in the rezoning area, and the city must provide transparent reporting and implementation. The impact statement shows a projection based on the reasonable worst case scenario, but these numbers are often severely underestimated, and we need to see reality as it plays out on the ground. As new buildings are constructed, the community must have access to reporting that proves new development does not add pollution or worsen flooding through a community-based task force that holds the city and developers accountable. Finally, the city must anticipate impacts of climate change and acknowledge existing limitations of the sewer system through commitments for infrastructure that will address capacity issues. The sewer model in the EIS is a step toward the local study that the community has been asking for years, but the city must commit to further developing this to identify critical needs, including upgrades to the Bond-Lorraine sewer line, connecting to Red Hook, additional sewer separation projects, and more green infrastructure throughout the watershed. We will follow up with extensive written comments, and we stand with our coalition and the community to fight for a more just and green neighborhood for all. Thank you.
Okay, our next slate of speakers will be speaking from the courtroom. Michael Thornton, followed by Chanjero Roman, Ralph Osorio, Vern Woodhead, and Kyle Danlow. And I apologize if I mispronounce anyone's name.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk today. My name is Michael Thornton, and I'm a local resident of Community Board 6. I live on Union Street in Carroll Gardens. I'm also an academic, and my specialty is the history of urban planning. I actually testified in favor of the rezoning a few weeks ago based on my belief that this could be an important step in rectifying the history of restrictive zoning in New York City, and also a great opportunity to rectify some of the sort of effects of the downzonings in Carroll Gardens and Park Slope in the early 2000s. I don't want to repeat my testimony today. I simply would like to urge the Borough President to endorse the resolution that my community board put out last week, which I think addresses a lot of the concerns that the Gowanus Coalition for Justice and other local groups have included or have spoke to already today. There is one area, though, that the resolution does not address that I would urge the Borough President to take into consideration. I'd really hoped that the resolution would include a more robust commitment to reducing private automobile use in the area, whether by widening sidewalks or maybe more dramatically, eliminating parking requirements altogether from all new development. I think we could have more car-free streets, more car-light streets. I know there are 1 or 2 in the rezoning plan, but more of those could be a great way to discourage automobile use, which I think is an important step in reducing our neighborhood's carbon footprint and sort of impact on the climate. Cities around the world have begun to do this, whether in Europe or in East Asia, redesigning their neighborhoods around humans rather than the private automobile. And I think Gowanus could really be an opportunity for Brooklyn and for New York to sort of lead the way in the United States in designing new neighborhoods that are adapted to climate change and reduce our collective carbon footprint. So I hope that you'll support this rezoning plan with the conditions that have already been laid out to address justness and local environmental concerns, and seize this opportunity to create Gowanus as a model for new urban design and urban development in New York. Thank you.
Okay, John Jairo Roman. Okay, Ralph Osorio.
Good evening. My name is Ralph Osorio, and I'm here on the behalf of my union, 32BJ, and the 85,000 building service workers 32BJ represents in New York City, to express our support for this rezoning. 32BJ supports responsible developers who invest in our communities where they build. I'm happy to report that many of the developers in the rezoning area have made credible commitments to create affordable housing for this community. The Gowanus rezoning will also create almost 8,500 new housing units, nearly 3,000 at below market rates. This is a commitment, is an investment in the community that will give working families the opportunity for upward mobility and security. As someone who has lived and worked in Brooklyn for over 42 years, I understand how important good jobs and affordable housing can be to that community. We support the rezoning, and we are confident that many of the developers will be responsible employers have made a positive impact on the community. For these reasons, we respectfully urge you to approve this rezoning. Thank you. On the behalf of New York City 32BJ members, we support this rezoning. Once again, thank you.
Fern Woodhead.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak in opposition to the rezoning. I call on Borough President Eric Adams to vote no on the rezoning. I'm a musician and I record and practice in Gowanus. Rehearsal spaces, recording studios, and music venues have all been shuttered under previous eager overdevelopments and rezonings all over the city. There is no reason to believe this time will be any different. The environmental impact statement and study that was done included many errors, and one of the errors was that my space where I practice, Band Spaces NYC, was listed as a recording studio. It is not a recording studio. It is a musician rehearsal space with 90 units in it, home to hundreds of musicians. By eliminating Band Spaces NYC, you would be eliminating an entire community of professional musicians, most of whom have already been hit hard by the pandemic. It listed places that offered similar services. One such place listed as Peter Carl Studio, which does not exist and is not in business anymore. And that's just one example of a poorly done study that was done by the same people who designed the rezone. There is a need for independent federal agencies to get involved, EPA, FEMA, Army Corps of Engineers. In May, Nydia Velasquez, Joanne Simon, Jabari Brisport, and Brad Lander called for the EPA, FEMA, and Army Corps of Engineers to be involved in an independent new environmental impact study. In addition, before any rezoning should take place, the NYCHA housing should be fixed and protected, because bringing in thousands of new residents into a Zone A flood zone is not a good idea. Thank you so much.
Kyle Danlow.
Good afternoon. My name is Kyle Danto. I'm a board member of Open New York, an advocacy organization working to end our housing crisis by creating more homes and ending exclusionary zoning. I am speaking today in favor of the proposed rezoning. We can argue about for whom affordable units are affordable, but it is vital that the whiter and wealthier parts of the city to allow mixed income housing to stem displacement and residential segregation, especially as New York is already amongst the most segregated cities of the country. With 8,500 new units, 3,000 of which would be affordable, this rezoning stands to further integration and fair housing across CB6. CB6 is 62% white compared to the city, which is 43% white, and has a median income of $118,000 compared to a median income of $64,000 across the city. If we don't rezone the Gowanus, the people who would otherwise live there would not disappear. Instead, they would spill over into neighborhoods like Crown Heights, Flatbush, or Bed-Stuy. And furthermore, on a day like today, with sweltering temperatures not only here in New York, but across the country, it is worth remembering that New Yorkers, with their largely car-free lifestyles and walkable neighborhoods, have 30% of the carbon footprint of the average American. Every person living here in New York, in Brooklyn, is opposed to the morass of Sunbelt sprawl, is a boon to the climate, not against it. People have offered reasons as diverse as special interests, not wanting the canal to be dredged lest anything untoward pop up, or who knows. But there are legitimate concerns, yes, but they're not insurmountable. I urge all stakeholders to work together to overcome these barriers and pass this rezoning. Thank you.
Okay, our next slate of speakers includes our WebEx viewers, starting with Brendan Cheney.
Good afternoon. My name is Brendan Cheney. I'm the Director of Policy and Communications at the New York Housing Conference. We are a nonprofit affordable housing policy and advocacy organization. I'm testifying in support of the Gowanus rezoning as long as it includes a dedicated capital commitment for repairs and upgrades at the local NYCHA residences. The city desperately needs more affordable housing and policies that will reverse and repair our history of racial discrimination. Rezoning high-income neighborhoods while requiring affordable housing development can help achieve both goals. As you know, New York is facing an ever-growing housing crisis. Homelessness continues to accelerate. Capital repairs need NYCHA total $40 billion, and nearly 1 million New Yorkers are rent burdened. The Gowanus neighborhood rezoning will map mandatory inclusionary housing throughout much of the area, the rezoning area, generating an estimated 30,000 units of desperately needed affordable housing. Every neighborhood should contribute to the city's affordable housing development, but bringing affordable housing to this neighborhood, where median income is higher than the borough as a whole and where a majority of residents are white, not Hispanic, is particularly important as it would help make it more economically and racially diverse. And this policy has wide appeal. It was one of the recommendations of the United for Housing Coalition, a coalition we formed and was joined by 90 partner organizations in New York City. The two adjacent housing developments, Gowanus Houses and Wyckoff Gardens, should also benefit from this plan with an upfront commitment to needed repairs. Preserving NYCHA is just as important as building new affordable housing. The affordable housing will also create jobs and spur needed economic recovery. Research has found that 100 units of affordable housing construction creates 230 jobs and $46 million in economic activity. Finally, it is important to note the extent of community involvement in this plan. An in-depth and inclusive community planning process was undertaken that produced the Gowanus Neighborhood Rezoning Plan. This process not only recommends that this plan be adopted, but it should be replicated in other neighborhoods in the city. As the city's economy struggles to recover, opportunities like Gowanus rezoning can create needed affordable housing, unlock new tax revenue, refill the construction pipeline, and help local businesses. The New York Housing Conference supports this rezoning and funding for adjacent NYCHA sites. Thank you for this opportunity to testify.
Okay, our next speaker is Lynn Newman.
Can you see and hear me?
Yes, please proceed.
My name is Lynn Newman, and I'm representing 350 Brooklyn, an organizational member of the Gowanus Neighborhood Coalition for Justice. 350 Brooklyn and GNCJ do not support the rezoning unless GNCJ's top 3 demands are met. Full upfront capital funding for NYCHA, pitting Gowanus Houses and Wyckoff Gardens against each other as the city's proposed funding did is divisive. Asking residents to choose between basic human rights is deplorable. New CSOs within the canal. The city must follow the EPA's timeline to construct the CSO retention tanks. Additionally, the DEIS does not study the capacity for regular dry day sewage from Gowanus to Red Hook to existing infrastructure. We do not want to displace a health and environmental hazard on a neighboring community of Red Hook, and this critically needs attention. I've been part of a community involved in envisioning the future of Gowanus for over 10 years. The city must commit to and fund a task force to ensure compliance with public and private commitments and adherence to the requirements. Gowanus is in desperate need of green space. We suffer from urban heat island effect. The proposed rezoning does not even meet the city's own recommendations for outdoor space. With climate change, the intensity and length of heat waves is worsening, as is the frequency and severity of communicable viruses like COVID. Increased density also brings with it additional HVAC systems which intensify street heat. Given all this, the current plan is not nearly adequate to provide a sustainable way of life for Gowanus residents. And in fact, the rezoning encourages people to move into an area that is potentially detrimental to their well-being. This is not responsible planning. Until this plan is amended to put people who live there or potentially live there first, I urge the Borough President to reject this rezoning. Thank you.
Okay, our next speaker is Marcel Negrete.
Hello, my name is Marcel Negrete. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Please proceed.
I'm here on behalf of the Regional Plan Association. RPA supports the proposed Gowanus neighborhood plan. We believe that the residents of Gowanus have the ability to improve the conditions of their neighborhood and at the same time contribute their fair share to the housing needs of thousands of New Yorkers across the city. After years of community engagement and building partnerships, we believe that the proposed neighborhood framework is by and large the right one. We believe that the city's current housing crisis and the need to prioritize a fair share approach justify the proposed land use actions. The existing households living in the Brooklyn Gowanus study area are by and large more affluent and socioeconomically resilient than most other New York City neighborhoods. When measured in terms of socioeconomic, household composition, demographic, and minority status, and even health outcomes, the Gowanus study area is much more socially resilient neighborhood when compared to the rest of the city. The exceptions to the aforementioned conditions are the residents of NYCHA and his rapidly Wyckoff and Gowanus houses, who certainly deserve special attention and commitments to bring the properties and buildings back to a state of good repair. This is something that should be guaranteed throughout this process. With the exceptions of NYCHA, the Gowanus neighborhood is affluent and is rapidly becoming even more affluent over time. The estimated average mean household income in the study area is $160,000, which is over $70,000 higher than the average of Brooklyn. The citywide housing shortage has put pressure on the residential markets in the neighborhoods surrounding Gowanus, including Carroll Gardens, Park Slope, and Burnham Hill, resulting in rising rents and property values. The historic districts and low-density zoning surrounding the neighborhood are artificially constraining housing supply in a way that externalizes housing cost burdens onto lower-income residents, exacerbating housing scarcity in the area and for the rest of the city. These pressures are manifested in residential rents, which have steadily increased in the study area and have surpassed the rest of the city since 2010. In the future, without the proposed actions, it is anticipated that the existing trends of increasing rents and increasing household income in the study area would continue. Under the proposed actions, both market and affordable units would increase due in part of the application of the MIH program. Under this scenario, the average household income of new residents
Marcel,
would
could
be
you please
less.
wrap up your remarks?
In some, there's a lot of details that could be addressed, and we endorse the comments from Community Board 6. We will submit with more details in writing. Thank you for your time.
Our next speaker is Shira Tapa.
Good afternoon. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, please proceed.
Thank you. My name is Shira Tapa. I'm speaking on my own behalf. Thank you to Borough Hall for allowing those that could not join in person today to testify remotely. I've been a Brooklyn resident of Community Board 2 for the past decade. I'm a public servant and have been lucky to find a home in rent-stabilized mixed-income rental housing, but I've also witnessed firsthand how Brooklyn's housing scarcity has grown even more severe in this time. I've had many friends and peers leave the New York area due to housing costs associated with a growing family. I've also seen many others like me, a first-generation Asian American immigrant, struggle to find housing stability, particularly in the opportunity and transit-rich parts of Brooklyn. We've effectively created a two-class system here in Brooklyn, those already fortunate to be homeowners or live in rent-advantaged housing, and everyone else that has to fight it out for the housing options that remain. We have an opportunity here to change that. The Gowanus rezoning has been in motion for a decade and has been held up by a litany of complaints, some compelling, some evidently obstructionist. At some point, we have to agree on compromises and realize how desperately we need 8,000 new homes in the Gowanus area keep the city continue to be a haven of opportunity for all. While my own community board, CB2, appears to reflectively say no to any change that might alter our neighborhood status quo, I think Community Board 6, and I congratulate them, had laid out an eminently reasonable approach to balance immediate community need with New York City's duty to expand housing opportunity for a wider swathe of its residents, both current and future, not just those already privileged to live in the richest parts of Brooklyn. The community's feedback has led to meaningful compromises in the proposal already. Let's move forward on the Gowanus rezoning. It's the fair, just, equitable, and environmentally sustainable thing to do. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jesse Solomon.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Jesse Solomon, and I'm the Executive Director of Southwest Brooklyn Industrial Development Corporation. SBIDC is a member of the Gowanus Neighborhood Coalition for Justice, and as others have said, we stand with the coalition's core demands for full capital funding for local NYCHA residences, net zero CSO, and the creation of an accountability task force. In order to ensure that this rezoning prioritizes an equitable and just recovery for the COVID-19 economic crisis, the rezoning needs to include investments in the industrial employers in Gowanus who have provided quality jobs in this community for many years, often folks who face structural barriers to employment. Although the Gowanus IBZ was not included in this neighborhood rezoning, DCP released an IBZ vision plan, something local small businesses and SBIDC have long advocated for. However, the vision does not include any specific commitments from this or future administration. Therefore, SBIDC, along with local business owners and advocacy partners, are demanding committed funding and projects that address the needs of the industrial sector. These projects should include infrastructure updates like improving the degraded streets in the IBC, creating dedicated loading and unloading zones on every block, and investing in an open access fiber conduit system to bring high-speed broadband to the neighborhood. It should also include multi-year funding for workforce development, bridge programming, and industrial job training so that local residents have access to these career-building jobs, and permanently staffing the coordinator position at NYCHA's local REIS office, which is currently vacant and connects residents to training programs and jobs on public projects. Finally, we need a zoning framework for the IBZ that fosters the growth of industrial development and helps businesses modernize and expand while limiting competing uses that impede the operations of industrial employers, such as big box retail, nightlife, and standalone office. The industrial sector was pivotal in keeping New York City's economy afloat during the pandemic. We cannot ignore the vital contributions this sector provides to the health of New York City, especially given that 80% of people who work for industrial employers are people of color and 50% are foreign-born. If we can secure the above commitments, the city and local stakeholders can ensure a thriving future for Gowanus' industrial sector, provide quality middle-class jobs to residents, and help owners to preserve, grow, and modernize workspace. We'll follow up with more detailed comments and written testimony. Thank you for your time.
Okay, our next slate of speakers will be in the courtroom. David Grisette, followed by Jack Riccabone, followed by Dmitry Ishenko, and Mac Thayer.
Do not trust in Jedi mind tricks. Do not trust the Jedi Council.
You can state your name for the record.
Hello, my name is Jack Riccobono, and I'm here for Voice of Gowanus, speaking in opposition to the Gowanus proposal. 2 minutes is really very brief to get into all the complex issues that this proposal will bring about in the neighborhood of Gowanus. But Voice of Gowanus is a group that includes founders who were part of the original fight to get the Superfund status for the Gowanus Canal and to try to bring about real environmental justice and see a way for a just and sustainable future in Gowanus. The truth is that this proposal, no matter what side of the issue that you're on, it's not about development or anti-development, affordable housing, or any of these things. At the core of it, we really have to think about due process and the fact that the serious health and safety issues have not been studied properly by the city. They released a draft environmental impact statement on April 19th that did not include EPA, FEMA, or the Army Corps of Engineers as involved agencies, which is required under SECRA and under the Superfund law. The New York City itself acknowledged in a 2008 scope of work that HUD, EPA, FEMA, and the Army Corps would have to be involved agencies, which means that they would actively analyze and participate in the creation of the environmental impact statement. That has not happened, and that is why the current DEIS is legally insufficient and subject to being overturned in the courts. So whatever side of the issue you are on, you should focus on this and vote no on this proposal because it is destined for failure, and we must protect our community by having legitimate environmental impact statement performed. That's why Congresswoman Nydia Velasquez and State Senator Jabari Brisport and State Assemblywoman Joanne Simon have joined Voice of Gowanus to call for such a study to be done. Please find out more at voiceofgowanus.org. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dmitry Shenko. I'm a professional musician living in Brooklyn, and I'm speaking against the rezoning the way it stands now, particularly in regards to the environmental impact statement, which has many flaws, only one of which I'll focus on right now. I'd like to point out a major inconsistency in the statement, Chapter 3, Socioeconomic. The inconsistency can be found in the private business displacement section of Chapter 3, particularly on page 17 in the information section. It is written, and I quote, "There are 3 potentially displaced information sector businesses employing an estimated 27 people in the projected development sites. The information sector businesses are Band Spaces NYC, a recording studio, projected development site 13. Then they list 2 other. The potentially displaced businesses represent approximately 1% of businesses and 1% of employment within the information sector in the study area. Okay, Band Spaces NYC is not a recording studio. It is a musician rehearsal space facility with 90 units within it, a home to hundreds of musicians, as several bands projects share each unit. It is a one-of-a-kind facility in the surrounding area due to its large size and its affordable monthly prices. While there are a couple more rehearsal facilities in the area, almost all of them are hourly spaces, and the ones that are not are a fraction of the size of Band Spaces NYC, and they're completely overbooked with long waiting lists. Hourly rehearsal spaces are extremely pricey for musicians to afford. Having a 24-hour lockout space where one can pay a reasonable monthly rent, store one's equipment, and practice at any given hour of the day at night has become a rarity in Brooklyn and New York City as a whole. By eliminating Band Spaces NYC, you would be eliminating an entire community of professional musicians, most of whom have already been hit hard by the pandemic and are the last people to return back to normal work in the entire city. There will be simply no place for them to go in the surrounding area, which will have an enormous impact on the arts as a whole in New York City. I strongly encourage you to adjust your calculations and correct the wrong information in your study to reflect the true impact of a space such as Band Spaces NYC. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Mac Thayer.
Is this mask on or mask off? Mask on. Mask on.
But you could raise the mic.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you for having this great public meeting and this great, beautiful space. I'm representing the community group GowanusLands.org, which is an open space advocacy group in Gowanus. Our feeling is frankly that we cannot support this rezoning proposal based on the effects on open space in the community. Unfortunately, the proposed actions would quite clearly be very bad for parks and open space in the Gowanus area. Basically, through doubling the population, you're going to have a much greater reduction in open space per capita, which has been quite clearly documented, I think, by numerous groups and also the official impact study by the city. And I would just read, it is concluded that the proposed action would result in significant adverse impact to open space due to the added residential demand placed on active open space in an area that already has limited available open space resources. So to be clear, we share the city's and DCP's goal for affordable housing in the community, but we feel like the effects on open space are pretty dramatic and would advocate for a proposal that has better results for open space in the community. Specifically, we think that a larger open space on the public place site is in order. That site has been designated since 1974 for open space and recreational space by the community. And so we would advocate for that site to become a park in line with the community's pretty clear and overwhelming long-standing demand for that site to become open space in the community. Thank you.
Okay, our next slate of speakers will be joining us via WebEx, beginning with Ankur Dalal.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity to let me speak today. I'm here to speak in support of the Gowanus rezoning, which will create thousands of new homes, including thousands of new affordable homes for more than 10,000 people. This rezoning is personal to me. When I first moved to New York City 16 years ago to work as a public school teacher, I moved to Brooklyn CB6 and I loved it here. The neighborhoods in this district are beautiful with great shops and restaurants and excellent mass transit access. Unfortunately, in 2008, during the financial crisis, I had a temporary drop in income and I could no longer afford my apartment. I looked around and I couldn't afford any apartments in the area that were within my new budget. Perhaps it's not surprising in a community board district where the median income is over $100,000 a year, but there weren't that many affordable apartments available to folks like me back then. In short, I was priced out. I ultimately moved to another part of the city entirely. If the thousands of affordable apartments the Gowanus rezoning would create existed back then, I may not have had to leave a part of the city that I loved. There has been some testimony today in opposition or in conditional support. I appreciate some of the concerns these speakers have raised, and I absolutely agree that we should finance NYCHA fully, as there have been decades in underfunding at a city and state level. I also agree that the plan should discourage car use to the extent possible and could eliminate parking minimums. While I hope the ultimate plan addresses some of these concerns to the extent possible, respectfully, I don't think any objection should prevent this rezoning from going forward, because this rezoning will result in thousands of new homes that are desperately needed. Let's create more homes for people who need them. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Andrew Sichom.
Shame on the 12 members of CB6 who didn't even appear for their vote. The transport thing is ridiculous. Read chapter 14 on transportation. You know, read how every train, peak hour train, will be oversubscribed by 14 people, 100+ people left on every platform in the morning. You know, get rid of cars so you can put in more apartments and make more money. We know how it works. You know, build it high. Let's see a rendering from some of these pro-development people that actually shows the full scope of this. 22 stories, 225 feet down each side of the canal. You know, even city planning with putting the high tower on the north side of each development. Well, you know, your north is my south, or my east, or my west. It's just folly. Why not give the developers some breaks, some tax breaks, and develop what is available, which is empty commercial and business real estate space in Manhattan, which actually does have great infrastructure in place, does have trains and public transport that can cope with this, that will not leave, you know, gridlock on the roads, that will enable, you know, will not enable buses to get around the neighborhood. You know, let's also remember one thing: you're putting the real chunk of affordable housing on an old manufactured gas plant in a flood zone A with rising sea levels. These are facts. You know, Eric Adams, this is your chance. You know, you're going to inherit this if you become mayor. You don't want to inherit this. This is going to be a mess. I think it'll be a time, of course, I'm speaking in opposition to this, and I am a 19-year resident of CD6. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Triada Samaras. Okay.
Oh,
Triata, we can hear you.
can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please proceed.
Oh, I'm very sorry. My name is Triata Samaras. I'm opposed to the current Gowanus rezoning plan and urge a pause in the overall process. I'm a member of the Gowanus Canal Citizens Advisory Group, the CAG, and I co-founded Carroll Gardens Coalition for Respectful Development with my neighbors in 2007. I bought my home in Carroll Gardens in the mid-90s. I'm a single mother and working artist. I worked many years to be able to own my own home in Carroll Gardens. In my arts education career, I've worked exclusively in public settings with the neediest communities in New York City and in urban New Jersey. I've been a committed community arts activist and vocal advocate for respectful development in Brooklyn for all of that time. The truth here about the health and the safety of this proposed rezoning are not visible to many of those who are here, who are admirably arguing for housing justice for the neediest New Yorkers and who believe this rezoning is a good thing. I urge everyone to carefully read the EIS, which has mistakes and flaws throughout it. It is completely responsible to railroad this community during this time when we are trying to emerge from a pandemic. Gowanus deserves better. Congresswoman Nydia Velázquez has publicly called for the draft environmental impact statement, the DEIS, for the Gowanus rezoning to be done with the full participation of federal agencies as required by state and federal law. Neither social nor economic nor environmental justice is being served by the current misguided and rushed rezoning. I'm opposed to the current plan and urge a pause in the overall process until a comprehensive study is done at Public Place and other coal tar remediation areas that fully documents the human health impacts of living over a coal tar contaminated site. As a CAG member, a CAG member, I can tell you that the City of New York is currently in total non-compliance with the EPA. In addition, this ULURP process has been entirely illegal and undemocratic until a few days ago. Affordable housing is indeed an issue in New York City, but the proposed rezoning that we are talking about puts the neediest—
Ms. Samaras, if you could wrap up your testimony, please.
—directly in harm's way due to chemical contaminants, inadequate CSO planning, and perhaps worst of all, the location of the land in a flood zone well documented during Hurricane Sandy as having toxic waters flooding throughout the surrounding streets. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Parents Students MS 51.
Hello, and thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight with these comments. I will submit the entire testimony to the email address. My comments are as follows. The DEIS is deficient because several analyses were performed in accordance with the 2014 Secret Technical Manual rather than the required 2020 Secret Technical Manual. The DEIS must be revised and reissued to properly disclose the proposed project's unmitigated significant adverse impacts to J.J. Byrne Playground and Washington Park due to new project-generated shadows and its unmitigated significant adverse impact to open space and public health. The DEIS must be revised and reissued to clearly disclose the unmitigated significant adverse impact to the Gil Hodges Community Garden in both the shadows and open space analyses. The DEIS must be revised and reissued to clearly disclose the unmitigated significant adverse impact to community facilities, including schools, specifically Sub-District 3, CSD 15 elementary schools, and several libraries, including the Carroll Gardens branch, the Pacific branch, the Park Slope branch, and the Red Hook branch. Finally, a second public hearing on the DEIS must be held to properly meet the requirements and spirit of SEQR and the public review. The public has been repeatedly referred to several websites to stay apprised of the project, including City Planning's own website, and it has been confusing and misleading to the public when the public meetings are and when the comment period begins and ends. If I have time remaining, I'd like to explain that the shadows analyses determined that J.J. Byrne Playground and the adjacent Washington Park would be immersed in dark shadow throughout the year from roughly 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. due to the proposed project. And this is precisely the hours when the children of MS 51 and adjacent schools, as well as after-school programs, soccer leagues, baseball leagues, use that park. It is the only sunlight these children see in their day from 3 to 6 p.m. This is a significant adverse impact due to shadows to thousands of our young Brooklynites. The rest of my comments will be submitted electronically. Thank you for your time.
Our next speaker is Debbie Stoller.
Hi, I'm here. You guys can hear me? Okay. My name is Debbie Stoller. I joined Grassroots Community Coalition Voice of Gowanus to oppose the deeply flawed Gowanus rezoning. I call on Borough President Eric Adams to vote no. Simply adding conditions won't cut it. This rezoning disrespects and endangers the greater Gowanus community. The combined sewer overflow tanks won't be built in time. Displacement will occur. We still don't have a racial impact study. People will be placed in harm's way and left to face flooding and toxic vapor risks. Developers will get handouts and build far more massively out-of-scale luxury buildings than we want or need. This plan will cost the city and state millions in subsidies and credits, and none of the 60 developers will be paying any property tax for 35 years. The rezoning must not proceed until federal agencies help redo the environmental impact statement as legally required. We keep being told that this rezone would make our neighborhood more diverse and welcoming of lower income families. If we were just building the affordable housing, that's true and it would work. But the vast majority of the rezone area is going to bring 3 wealthy people for every 1 lower income person. Do the math, you don't get diversity that way. Our city council members and the mayor have sold us out to developers. And recently it's also come out in the press that even our own borough president, Adams, has close ties to some of the developers in Gowanus who want this rezone. I asked him to prove he is different, that he's not just a tool of the real estate industry. If he becomes mayor, perhaps he can come up with something better than de Blasio's flawed MIH plan. I asked him to please vote no on the Gowanus rezoning.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Please proceed.
Good afternoon. My name is Owen Foote. I am a resident of been living nearby Gowanus for the last 20 years. And I am speaking on behalf of myself, even though I've been heavily involved with the community. I speak in favor of this zoning because it will presumably produce over 1,500 affordable apartments, even though you've been told it would do 3,000. The other 1,500 are very close to what people pay in rent in Gowanus today. I repeat, Gowanus is an affordable neighborhood today in the principle under our city's zoning for mandatory inclusionary housing. However, about half of what's being proposed will truly be affordable. Second, please stop saying Gowanus is a white neighborhood. Community Board 6 is very white. Gowanus is filled with descendants of African and Latin. Please stop. Gowanus is a small portion of Community Board 6 that has its last remaining affordable housing. I'm here today, though, to really compliment Borough President Adams as he spoke on the 300 Huntington Street rezoning to try to provide accommodation for on-water access, and I request that he makes a similar request to City Planning Commissioners today. Unfortunately, City Planning Commission decided to decline and remove and deprove instead of improve the access to over 3,000 residents of Red Hook, most of whom are African and Latin descent and lower income. Our City Planning Commission and consequently our City Council and our Mayor rejected the Borough President's suggestion to accommodate on-water and improve access. Please don't remove access, improve access. I'm asking that as a condition for the Borough President's consideration today. Second condition I'm asking for, please take a look at the horrible lighting that's proposed. This lighting is for vehicles. It has shade protection so that the affluent residents that pay to enjoy the rooftops of all these buildings and I say affluent because you have to pay a special fee. So the affordable people are not on the rooftops of our current luxury housing in Gowanus. Only those who can pay, they get to see the night sky. Come down to our shoreline any night this week, look up, and you're going to be staring into bright lights. So please, Borough President, ask that the city planning remove that condition from their WAP proposal. In addition, you've heard me say this many times, please ask for removal of the handrails that block access and use
Owen,
of our
please
waterfront.
wrap up your
Thank you.
testimony.
I thank you so much, and have a good day.
Okay, our next speaker is Jay Garena. Hi, yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Thank you for this opportunity. This was a last minute call-in for me. I didn't know you were having this meeting today. I just want to applaud everybody who had their thoughts about the rezoning and all their work they did with the research. I totally agree with you, especially Lynn Newman. I completely agree with the air quality and everything. I'm a longtime Gowanus resident, and I see firsthand what's going on. And for this area to have a proposal of having these soaring height buildings, which is out of scale, people don't realize that you are in direct line with the Hamilton asphalt plant and the fumes waft inland. So you're not only going to be dealing with air quality issues, but allowing people to live on a toxic ground that will never be remediated in this short period of time is just very scary. So there's so many environmental factors that have been brought to our attention during this meeting that prove that this area is unsafe to live upon. But it gets overshadowed by economic growth, which I find quite sad. As what my parents always said, your health is the most important factor in anyone's life, not money. So building in this area is, to me, just a money grab. I know people need affordable housing, but Brooklyn is a big area. We could find other places to build upon. I am against the rezoning. It could be used for better use, low industrial, because people do need their jobs. And we definitely need more green space. I think the pandemic has shown us that being at home and doing remote work, we need to get out. Everybody's in an apartment and we need more green space. Prospect Park is great, but it is getting crowded. If anybody's been there this past summer, it was just a little overwhelming. So again, you could build anywhere. Why here? I'm against the Gowanus rezoning. Thank you for listening to me.
Our next speaker is Matthew Gutentag.
Hi, thank you for letting me speak. I'm a resident of the area, and I'm in favor of the rezoning for 3 reasons. First of all, I have a growing family. We have a small apartment, and we know we're going to need more space. We really want to stay in the area, but frankly, we don't see a pathway to being able to stay and getting more space without new housing options. Whether or not we would be able to live in the new housing, at the very least, the presence of that housing will mean the people living there are not bidding up existing housing stock and relieving some of the pressure there. Secondly, there are lots of people much less fortunate than us. You know, we're fortunate enough to be able to afford a small apartment right now. And right now, those people have, frankly, no options. And without some new affordable housing and new housing, they're totally out of luck to join this wonderful neighborhood. And thirdly, I want to raise my family in a diverse neighborhood. And without new housing and new affordable housing, I don't see this neighborhood getting more diverse. I see it getting richer and more homogeneous as people continue to bid up the existing housing stock. I hear people here talking about, you know, the height of the buildings, And frankly, I just don't think people's aesthetic preferences should take precedence over people's ability to find a place to live. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Lucy Coteen.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, please proceed.
Hi, my name is Lucy Coteen. I join with many other residents and Voice of Gowanus who oppose the deeply flawed Gowanus rezoning. I will also mention that I work closely with the New York City group of the Sierra Club, which opposes the rezoning as there are many serious environmental issues that have not been addressed. One, why is there any discussion of any housing before the area is successfully cleaned up of all toxins, CSOs, and the Superfund cleanup is completed? And furthermore, it's in a flood zone. This is insanely backwards. The EPA administrator has already stated that public place can never be remediated due to the coal tars buried there. So what kind of person supports putting low-income people with few choices in their life, on forever toxic land? It sounds criminal to me. And two, why do people always talk about 20% affordable housing rather than the 70 to 80% market rate and luxury housing? That is the smoke and mirrors game our politicians play. In every district where upzoning has occurred, there has been great gentrification, displacement of residents, harassment from landlords and developers, and loss of mom and pop shops. Three, who here thinks that we need more market rate housing built? The city is awash with empty housing units, with thousands more in development. Just look around and see the sky dotted with cranes. It looks like not one more market or luxury housing unit is needed to be built at this time. Who can show me evidence that I am wrong? Four, why is this rezoning being rushed through when the city does not know the housing needs post-pandemic? The city has lost a lot of population. The city does not know what real estate will be available to adaptively reuse. What is the rush? Five, Community Board 6 wrote 14 pages of conditions. In what history that they have read has the city ever shown any regard to conditions suggested by a community board? Six, the retention tanks that the city needs to put in place are only fitted out for the current CSO conditions at best. They do not take into account the 20 to 40,000 more residents planned in this 82-block rezoning, or the thousands of other residents that are supposed to inhabit all the new residential units now being built and recently built. This is not planning, this is magical thinking. Seven, the community will
Lucy,
be placed
please wrap up your testimony.
and left to face flooding and toxic vapor risks. Developers will get handouts and build far more massively out-of-scale luxury buildings than we want or need. The rezoning must not proceed until federal agencies help redo the environmental impact statement as legally required. And one more thing, we've had 11 and a half years of Steve Levin and Brad Lander to bring repairs to NYCHA, and now they want to tie it to the rezoning. What happened in the last 11 and a half years? Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Alexia Nazarian. Okay. We're now going to move to our slate of speakers who are waiting on the phone. Okay, so for those calling in, please identify yourself prior to giving testimony.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, though you're cutting in and out a bit.
Oh, sorry. Is this better?
A bit, yes.
Is this better? Good. Okay. Hi. Sorry, I just ran up a flight of steps. My name is Alicia Boyd. I'm a resident of CB6. A few months ago, the chief demographer of the city gave an interview to the New York Times before he retired. Some of you may have read it. And he said that the biggest threat to the city is that we stop attracting immigrants. We have a housing shortage. Look at parts of the city where COVID was hit the worst. Central Queens, the Bronx. You have people living in dangerously crowded conditions. My parents are immigrants, so this is personal for me, and they were able to come to this country and make a better life for themselves and their family here. Every time one of you say that housing can be built somewhere else, guess what? There's another one of you, many more of you, in that neighborhood, that somewhere else, that says that they don't want it there either. So then where does it go? Seriously, you're all civically engaged, clearly, and I thank you for that, even if we have a difference of opinion. And I bet many of you voted for a candidate for mayor or city council who promised to create more affordable housing. Well, this is it. This is the chance. The Gowanus rezoning has been in the works for a decade. It would create over 8,500 homes, 3,000 of which are affordable. So you know what I'm thinking when I'm looking at this proposal? I'm thinking about the people living in dangerously crowded conditions who suffered this year, who continue to suffer, and of the millions of immigrants who have been able to make the city their home, who may not be able to in the future. So I really support this from the bottom of my heart, and that's all. Thank you.
Okay. Our next speaker by phone, please identify yourself prior to giving testimony. Hello? Okay. Do we have more speakers by phone? Okay. None at this time, so we will continue with our WebEx speakers. Samara Karasik.
Good afternoon. I am Samara Karasik, Chief Policy Officer at the Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce. I'm here today to testify in favor of the Gowanus rezoning. This rezoning presents a unique opportunity to transform a mostly inaccessible waterfront into a resilient, clean, publicly accessible community resource and introduce infrastructure that addresses rising sea levels, flooding, and other threats from climate change. In addition to affordable housing and good-paying jobs, rezoning Gowanus will accomplish the cleanup of former industrial sites, the creation of open space along a revitalized waterfront, the installation of environmental resilience measures, and protection of the Gowanus mix, the community of artists and makers. The Gowanus rezoning will provide new affordable housing opportunities for thousands of New Yorkers and make a relatively affluent and majority white neighborhood more equitable and diverse. New York City was fighting a housing affordability crisis even before the health and economic crises brought in by COVID-19. A rezoned Gowanus neighborhood is expected to create approximately 3,000 affordable housing units, with nearly 70% of the apartments located on waterfront sites. Local and economic initiatives, such as the Gowanus rezoning, is one of the most effective ways the mayor and city council can support the city's recovery from the pandemic. Now that the rezoning is finally moving forward, construction projects will put people to work in good-paying jobs, and residential projects will create much-needed affordable housing. The proposed Gowanus rezoning is designed to ensure that land is appropriately remediated before any development occurs. Development sites will need to be fully remediated by property owners and government agencies at every level. Sites will go through a rigorous formal review and the required remediation process before a project is constructed. Thank you for your time.
Our next speaker is Sabine Aronofsky.
Hi, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, please proceed.
Okay, my name is Sabine Aronofsky. I'm a proud member of the Gowanus Neighborhood Coalition for Justice, GNCJ. My family's been in Gowanus for decades. We have one of the last remaining stained glass art studios in New York City, let alone in Gowanus. My child attends public school here. I work and rent here, and I'm personally extremely rent burdened, and my parents cannot afford to retire here. I'm here to testify today as a member of GNCJ to reiterate our #1 demand that our coalition will not support this rezoning unless the city meets its obligation to fully fund local public housing. The $274 million needed should not be a negotiation, it's an obligation. We're seeking from this rezoning proposal a commitment to oversight and a plan for environmental, racial, and economic justice for our community and neighborhood. The 2017 New York City enacted environmental justice laws must be adhered to for Gowanus. The Northern Canal area is now a mapped environmental justice area, and therefore we need commitments for funding, not only to public housing, but to grow green space and envision a parks improvement district centered around our one little community oasis of Thomas Green Park that needs investment and stewardship to address the recreational open space needs, urban heat island, and CSO mitigation to offset the environmental burdens in this area. The Gowanus Houses Community Center is also still not fully reopened or even renovated, and we still lack a Gowanus Community Emergency Preparedness Plan 8 years after Sandy. All this presents a public health threat forecasted to intensify on account of climate change. We have a heat index today of 104. We need investment and development strategies such as those put forward by Urban Land Institute's Urban Resilience Program report on Gowanus. And we need the North Canal Visioning Plan initiated through EPA to continue through the local council member offices. Part of that vision included mapping the eastern effects lot to park space and demapping Nevin Street between DeGraw and Douglas to grow park space. Finally, any adaptation and mitigation measures to be achievable by the DEIS must include analysis of impacts of increased density housing, CSO, and open space from all the forecasted construction and development from Pacific Park, AKA Atlantic Yards. And we must ensure any points of agreement with community-led project oversight and agency coordination through a rezoning commitment task force. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Sandy Renz.
Hi, it's astounding to me that there is any trust or that anyone believes in anything the Department of City Planning says, considering the history of careless development in this city and the misrepresentation of the community's voice, which was evidenced by the Department of City Planning's Jonathan Keller's disclosures and description of the outreach process that went on for this very development. This neighborhood was what this proposal pretends it wants to create, but with very little vision. Nothing in this magical aspirational language of affordable housing, preservation of a beloved neighborhood, job creation, new infrastructure, sustainability, or art space matters if this area remains toxic, which it will if something isn't changed in this proposal, or is flooded beyond repair due to climate change. This is the reality, and this proposal does not address these obstacles, not in the environmental impact statement or any continued oversight. That people think there will be jobs, that the union people think that these jobs are what they need to depend on, isn't valid. Atlantic Yards has yet to supply the mandated affordable housing or jobs that it proposed, and that project began in 2012. This neighborhood, I have lived in this neighborhood for 30 years, and I understand that density is a path to sustainability. Yes, we do need affordable housing, but there are ways to achieve this. Develop, don't destroy still rings true. Thank you.
Okay, we're now moving to our remaining in-person speakers. We have Ben Shepherd. Could you please go up to the lectern?
Right over here, sir.
Right here.
Hi, I'm Benjamin Shepard. I oppose the Gowanus rezone. I've lived in the neighborhood for 20 years. My concerns are, A, environmental. The cleanup is not going to happen in time. B, it's a development frenzy, developer giveaway that's going to make the neighborhood unlivable. And C, we can do better. Everybody knows the affordable. If this is about housing, let's make it 100% affordable. That's not what's going to happen here. So I employ the Eric Adams to vote against this Gowanus rezoning. We've seen enough developer giveaways. We don't need one here. Thank you very much. Please vote against the Gowanus rezone. Take care. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Nora Almeida.
My name is Nora Almeida. I'm here today to express my opposition to the current plan to rezone Gowanus, certified by the DCP. I'm also here to express my frustration about this land use process, which only allows for minimal and performative community engagement. City council representatives and the borough president and the mayor, who will all have a say in this massive land use change, are not listening. I can't tell if they're here. In light of this, I give this testimony with certainty that the city does not hear me. I'm a resident of Gowanus, an environmental activist, and an educator at CUNY. I've extensively engaged in conversations about this proposal and am well informed about the specific social and long-standing environmental justice problems this rezoning would introduce into this neighborhood, which is a filled marsh on a floodplain with a number of former manufactured gas plant sites. This rezoning will displace people and artists and small businesses, will fail to ensure capital improvements for NYCHA, will benefit private developers, and will introduce public health risks. The majority of current residents in Gowanus are NYCHA residents, not white or wealthy. Most of the new housing, 70% of it, will be market rate and luxury. The MIH is one of the reasons CB2 voted this proposal down. Federal agencies need to be involved in planning any rezoning so that we can ensure that the toxic sites are safely cleaned up for current residents, and the EPA Superfund site remedy for the canal is not compromised. The Gowanus Canal is in a FEMA flood zone A. Someone mentioned Hurricane Sandy. This was a place that was very, very affected by Hurricane Sandy and flooding. Why are we relocating thousands of people to high-rise apartments there? New York City needs to design and build the CSO tanks before developer build thousands of apartments here. Brown sewage from 20,000 more residents will increase pathogens in the canal. On-site stormwater retention from yet to be instituted rule does not solve that problem. The Gowanus rezoning will place thousands of low-income people in the real only affordable site on the most toxic land in the area on public place. A site full of coal tar that we've all heard about a lot today. And it will not be fully remediated for low-income residents. Be on the right side of history. Don't help the city council and mayor implement this plan. I hope that Eric Adams even hears this. Thank you.
So we want to keep the hearing open, but we don't have any more people waiting in line to testify, so we'll go on a 20-minute break until about 6 o'clock, and we'll circle back. So we're going to adjourn the hearing for 15 minutes, and we'll see you back at 6 o'clock. Thank you.
Okay, good evening. It is just after 6 o'clock. We will now resume this hearing on the Gowanus Neighborhood Plan, and I will call the next 5 speakers who are joining us via WebEx. Harrison Grinnan.
Hello.
Hello,
My
we
name's
can hear
Harrison.
you. Mm-hmm.
I am not a resident of Community Board 6 because I cannot afford to live there, like many people. Actually, most people. The average income there is about twice the national average, I believe. Maybe 3 times. It's 118,000. I'm not familiar with what the national median income stats are. Brooklyn Community Board 6 is whiter and richer than the city average. Now, I'm not talking about specifically Gowanus, I'm talking about the community as a whole, because that's who we've heard most of the complaints from today. By virtue of the mixed incoming housing, the rezoning is going to further integration and fair housing in that community board district. It's vital that the white and wealthy parts of the city allow mixed income housing to stem displacement and residential segregation. The Bloomberg method of upzoning, where we upzone poor areas and downzone rich areas, did not work to prevent displacement and will not bring us the city that we need. We need to upzone rich areas, such as the Community Board 6, and more that I can think of, but this is the one that we're under discussion now. When it comes to climate change, I think that it's important that we start doing actions on this as fast as possible. This rezoning has been under discussion for 10 years now. We've had a lot of process, and quite frankly, we're running out the clock on climate change. Every single person that lives in New York City is a person that's not moving to Phoenix or Texas, which are the fastest growing areas in America. Essentially, that's climate arson. Not building this housing would be climate arson. And of course, we need to remediate, the toxic chemicals, and we need to fund New York City public housing. But allowing rich homeowners in the Carroll Gardens and the adjacent areas to run out the clock on this and hope that we can continue the process forever and ever, it's just, it's not progressive. That's a sort of conservative, fundamentally conservative action. And it's, I don't know. I think that's all I have to say on that.
Our next speaker is Johnny Thornton.
Hello, my name is Johnny Thornton, and I'm the Executive Director of Arts Gowanus, and I'm also an artist who works in the neighborhood. Our mission at Arts Gowanus is to support, promote, and advocate for local artists in order to create a sustainable arts community in Brooklyn. Arts Gowanus is also a proud member of the GNCJ, and we fully support its top 3 demands. We believe these demands are 100% necessary to move our neighborhood forward in a responsible and equitable way. Arts Gowanus believes that the creativity of local artists contributes to the vibrant cultural life and energy of New York City. It is critical to the neighborhood that arts continue to thrive in Gowanus. Every artist is its own small business. And like so many neighborhoods before it, the creative community have been continuously getting priced out of their workspaces and forced to move out of the neighborhood in search of more affordable ones. We believe this cycle needs to change. As it stands now, Gowanus has already become too expensive for large portions of the creative community. We need to create permanently affordable artist workspaces in the neighborhood. We are currently in talks with several potential stakeholders on a deal that would use the Gowanus Mix 0.03 FAR to guarantee that artists and makers in the community would receive highly subsidized studio spaces at a price point we feel would drastically improve affordability, hopefully making Gowanus among the most affordable studio spaces in the 5 boroughs. These considerations would need to be ironclad and remain in perpetuity to ensure Gowanus stays creative for the long term. Without guaranteeing sustainable and affordable artist workspaces, this rezoning will accelerate the lack of affordability that has forced artists out of our community. A deal is yet to be reached. As a member of the creative community and as a representative of Arts Gowanus, we ask that the rezoning not be approved unless the top 3 demands of the GNCJ are met, and without first ensuring long-term affordable art studios in Gowanus. Thank you.
Okay, our next speaker is Jay Marcus.
Hi. Hi.
Hi, please proceed.
Thank you. My name is Jay Marcus, and I'm with Fifth Avenue Committee. And we're a 45-year-old nonprofit economic and social justice agency. We are also one of the co-developers for a portion of the Gowanus rezoning, Gowanus Green. And the message I think that we want to pervade here, same one that we gave at the community board hearing, is that we look forward even to those voices who are voices of skepticism, or maybe even especially to them, to work with them as we develop, we hope can develop the Gowanus Green Project. It's an important part of what will make this the diverse community that I know so many of us are striving, some of the recent speakers spoke to have. We're very proud that the 950 affordable housing units that we are proposing to develop will be for families, will be for seniors, will include a portion for the homeless crisis that we are all as citizens wanting to address. And we also know that it's going to be adding to the diversity of the Carroll Gardens community. So again, the main thing though I did just want to indicate, as one of the several development teams that'll be a part of this, we, and particularly as a nonprofit, are sensitive to this, look forward to working with the community in hearing their concerns, addressing them as much as we can within the current parameters of the proposed rezoning. And with that, I also, of course, encourage the Borough President to support the rezoning. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Douglas Hanau.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please proceed.
My name is Douglas Hanau. I'm a 23-year resident of Community Board 6. I have seen 0 units of affordable housing built in Community Board 6 since I've lived here. I have seen arguments in Community Board 6 about why we shouldn't, and very few about why we should. I live here in a single-family house that I bought 20 years ago, and that has doubled in value for no reason other than I bought a house here. I didn't do anything. I'm not special. I just bought a house here. And I've been fortunate that it's unbelievably valuable because we are keeping supply down, and what we need to do is build more housing so the neighborhood's affordable, so people like my 2 children can live somewhere else other than this house in this community with their friends. And my daughters are artists and students and going to be young professionals, hopefully, who need a place to live. And right now, they can't live in this neighborhood. The only reason they're going to stay here if they choose to is because we bought a house here 20 years ago. This community is never going to change. It's never going to improve. It's never going to be dynamic. It's going to be the same old people like me who live here. We need to be more vibrant. We need to build housing. We need to build housing in Gowanus because there's no place else in Community Board 6 where legally we can do this. Everything is historic, everything is single family zoned. This is the place, this is the time, we have to do this. I implore you, Borough President Adams, to support the Gowanus rezoning. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Marlene Donnelly. Okay, Marlene, are you available to give testimony? Okay, can we move on to S.J. Avery and then return to Marlene? Thank you.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please proceed.
Okay, thank you. I'm S.J. Avery, a member of the Park Slope Civic Council and a proud member of the Gowanus Neighborhood Coalition for Justice.
What's going on here?
Whoops. I'm stopping. I don't. Are
Okay,
you stopping the clock?
Marlene, we're going to take S.J. Avery first, and then you'll have the chance to give testimony.
Okay, to continue. The coalition will not support the rezoning unless our top 3 demands have been met, as discussed earlier. What I'd like to do is discuss our 3rd demand, the creation of a Gowanus Zoning Commitment Task Force to hold the city and all parties accountable during and after the rezoning process. If the process moves forward after a decade of community meetings on the future of the Gowanus neighborhood, this is not the time to end civic engagement. The Gowanus rezoning is a massive undertaking, significantly dependent on capital commitments at the city, state, and federal level. No other rezoning plan has the economic complexity and interdependence that Gowanus has. Literally hundreds of millions of dollars will be spent at 3 levels of government, not to mention by developers in the coming 15 years. The physical and social impact of the development on current residents will be substantial. The public health services, schools, sanitation, sewer, water, traffic control, open space, public health needed by the projected 30,000 additional residents will likewise be costly. Even now, there are huge unanswered questions about the support for NYCHA housing, the status of infrastructure investment, support for artists, and what exactly the Gowanus mix means. I want to keep an eye on what actually happens in the next 15 years. A Gowanus Zoning Commitment Task Force bringing together representatives from local organizations, city agencies, and stakeholders is key to monitoring compliance with commitments in the Gowanus Neighborhood Plan. The city needs to support it and fund it. No more empty promises, no more zoning surprise results. We need to assure accountability. I urge the Borough President to consider the establishment of the Zoning Commitment Task Force in his review of this proposal. Thank you.
Okay, we will now hear from Marlene Donnelly.
Okay, the first thing I'd like to ask the Borough President to respond to or include in his response to this action is the map that is in the zoning resolution to change, that's mandated to be changed, has gone missing. We have foiled the look at the original map for the public play site back in October. The city has said they cannot find it. And I think it's important because the Borough President runs the topo department that they make that map available to the public for review. It seems to be missing and they can't find it at the Department of Finance. This is required to be amended as part of this process. The information should be transparent. The other thing I'd like to ask the Borough President to focus on here is that we are moving forward with an environmental assessment here that is lacking the necessary inputs from the federal agencies that are party to overseeing the non-compliances that the city is the federal agencies are responsible for overseeing that the city has not met, both on clean water and under Superfund and under the sewer backup actions. That given the state of the lack of appropriate environmental assessment, that the Borough President says this should kick this back and start this process so that we can all sit here and do this review with a proper environmental assessment. I do want to particularly point out that I'm very concerned about the proposal in the that's put in the DEIS on the stormwater management system here in Gowanus. That we had a review of that was presented to the community board in December with DEP presenting. I asked a very clear question to the DEP at that time that have they looked at the fact that the sites that they're talking about developing don't currently sewer their rainwater into the sewer systems. The open parking lots don't have any way to collect that rainwater and funnel it to the sewers
which they all sit downhill from the last street grate where sewage, just rainwater was collected. And that DEP's response was they are giving the developers credit for removing that stormwater that they're not putting into the system. The numbers that they're saying on net zero are fake because of this. And we need to have clear environmental assessment. We need to go back to the table, and we need to see the what's really going on here. Thank you.
Okay, we will now take several in-person speakers, starting with Michael Bruffy.
Hello. Good afternoon. My name is Michael Bruffy. I am a resident of Flatbush, Brooklyn, but I grew up in Park Slope, only a few blocks away from the Gowanus Canal. I'm 32 years old. In the time that I've lived, I've seen high-rise luxury developments happen around Barclays Center, and I've seen high-rise developments appear on 4th Avenue, completely displacing the residents that have lived there and completely changing the face of that neighborhood. I'm really concerned about the definition of affordable housing that has been used in the development of all of these high-rises, because that definition is not accurate. The other thing I'd like to say is that I'm really concerned about the environmental assessment that's been going on in this rezoning plan. Gowanus is a Superfund site. It's incredibly dirty still, although there's a lot of work that's been done, and I would really like to see a much more thorough assessment of what people plan to do with this site. So to the ULURP committee and to Eric Adams, I would really demand a reassessment of that. I would really rather also that the millions that would be invested into this community not be spent on new developments, but be spent on really repairing public housing in the area and helping the thousands of people that already live in the area in subpar housing to be prioritized, and not favoring the coffers of millionaire developers. Thank you very much.
Okay. Our next speaker is May Frankenberger.
Hi, my name is May Frankenberger, and I'm a resident in Gowanus, and I oppose this rezoning. I believe this is a crime against the people of this community, and it's a lie to any newcomers to the neighborhood if this rezone goes through. This is more than just affordable housing for today, but an environmental injustice issue for the future generations who grow up in this community. I implore President Adams to consider to oppose the Gowanus rezoning because of the environmental injustices that will occur if this rezoning were to go through. Gowanus is a flood zone, and what the neighborhood desperately needs is more money for infrastructure to keep the community safe from the climate crisis that is currently upon us. I yield the rest of my time. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Elise Schuck.
Hello, how are you? Can you hear me? Okay. My name is Alicia Schuck. I've been a resident of Brooklyn since 2002. Oh, can I take my mask? Okay. I am also a proud member of Voice of Gowanus. I am here today to strongly encourage Borough President Eric Adams to vote against the proposed Gowanus rezone. The plan is fundamentally flawed for several reasons. First, the city plans to build the most affordable housing and a school on the most toxic land, which is the public place site. That choice is the very definition of poor land use planning. That is a choice that will put children and families at significant health risks for decades to come. Second, as other Voice of Gowanus members have raised today, the short and long-term environmental impacts of the rezone have not been thoroughly explained or investigated. That's what I want to say. Thanks.
Our next speaker is Brad Vogel. Please refrain from clapping. Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Brad Vogel, and I just want to start out by saying that this rezoning is not about affordable housing. And I'd also like to state that this rezoning is not about affordable housing. And finally, actually not finally, but yet another time I'd like to say, this rezoning is not about affordable housing. There is so much window dressing upon window dressing, layering this rezoning. And if you actually finally peel away all the goodies that are being handed out, and you peel away all of this rhetoric, what you find underneath is this is yet again, as with so many ULURPs, and ULURP being the very, very flawed, skewed process that it is, it's in the end about real estate interest. It's about real estate and people making loads of money by putting up luxury towers in a flood zone on polluted land. That is really what this is about. I also look around and I have to ask, where is the Borough President? This is the Borough President's ULURP hearing for the Gowanus rezoning. He is not, as far as I can tell, present here in the chamber, and I cannot see him anywhere online. So I would like to say, does Borough President Eric Adams give a crap about Gowanus? And I ask that because we have a lot of crap in Gowanus, and we are going to have more, literally. That is not just metaphorical. Combined sewer overflow is a real problem in Gowanus, and it is going to get worse if this rezoning passes. So I am a proud member of Voice of Gowanus. I live in Gowanus. I am not here because I'm going to have any financial gain from this rezoning. And I ask you genuinely, given the outsized scope and scale of this rezoning and the underlying motives for it, please vote no on this rezoning. We in the community oppose this out-of-scale, massive monster of a rezoning. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Robert Mo Maloney.
Hello. I'm 71 years old. I've worked in every art institution in Brooklyn. I was one of the technical directors of the original Celebrate Brooklyn, which was a people's fest, and now it's a people's mess. I work in a bar called Rocky Sullivan's. We survived 2 hurricanes, but we have not survived the pandemic. We are against this development. The place is a mess. I remember my nephew playing ball on the fields in Red Hook for Severian High School. They were contaminated, they were polluted, they're still polluted. This development is a disgrace. Eric's not here, we know why. He's our next mayor. Is he gonna be the one to stop this crap? Bloomberg rezoned Midtown Manhattan because he said that buildings could not be redone. I could knock down the Chrysler building next week if I got the money. We don't need this kind of housing. I live in Section 8 housing in Park Slope run by Catholic Charities. I pay $400 a month because I'm poor. There is no housing like this being built today. Bishop McGovern, God bless his soul, built 33 senior citizens apartments with federal money, not with developers' money, waiting for 25 years so they could turn my apartment into a $3,500 a month apartment. I have 16 seconds left here. And what I say to you, and nobody's watching because this is a channel, okay? Go to hell! Don't destroy New York! We don't need development. Thank you.
Okay, do we have Joanne Brown? Okay, Joanne
Yes.
Brown via WebEx.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please
Hello.
proceed.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, my name is Joanne Brown, and I've been here in this development, and we're here in this area for 40 plus years. And I have seen the different changes in the environments and every aspect. Well, my complaint is that I'm all for them helping out NYCHA because I live in NYCHA. Right now, they don't charge development into Section 8, RAD. So, but I'm still looking out for White Corp and Red Hook and beyond. But they do need all the help that they can get, but I'm all for them building like at least 50% to 75% of apartment that's available for people that's living in shelters, that's working. They work every day. They live in shelters. They need homes and all this. And I understand about the Gowanus Canal and all that. I understand all that. But we have a lot of discrepancy between everything. So one thing some people say is another. I am okay. I live here for too many years to see the different environment that we need some help. We don't need to be divided. We need to come together as one. I'm tired of all this dividing here, do here, there. No. If anything is happening, we all need to come together as one and stop bickering amongst ourselves. Come together. Other countries can come together so let us New York City a better place so we all can be living as one. I know that we need to help, so to send some money. Y'all got funding, okay, all well and good. Help us out here. Stop bickering. We need people that's gonna be understanding. And then there's gonna be looking for people to be helping one another to get a place to stay. People shouldn't have to be moving out of New York City in order to be living. People going someplace else. This is ridiculous. Rent is too damn high, as they say. They always say the rent is too damn high. It is too damn high. And all people to be living, especially during COVID. You know that COVID-19 done hit us very hard. Jobs in there. People are out in the street, they cannot afford to. So, but I thank you for allowing me to speak. My mind, I'm speaking for myself and what I feel inside of my brother regarding what is to New York City alone. Thank you so very much for your patience and your kindness.
Okay, do we have any other speakers, either via WebEx or by phone? Okay, not at this time. We encourage anyone who is tuning in via WebEx and interested in testifying to message the panelists and request to speak. And we are accepting testimony, of course, in writing, which can be emailed to askeric@brooklynbp.nyc.gov.
So we'll wait 5 more minutes to see if there's any testimony comes in from WebEx or by the phone, and if not, we'll close the hearing and take any written testimony for future consideration.
Okay, we have another speaker. Okay, Carla Fisk, please proceed.
Hi, am I on video as well? Can you hear me?
We can hear you, but we only have audio.
So I can't speak via video, or maybe I can. There I am.
We have you, yes. Please proceed.
Okay, great. Okay, great. Just give me a second here. I want to set my own stopwatch. Hello, my name is Carla Fisk. I am a member of the steering committee of Inwood Legal Action. I'm a resident of Inwood in Manhattan. I'm speaking in strong opposition to the Gowanus rezoning, and I urge Borough President Eric Adams to vote against it. And I'm going to share my own direct experience with a similar rezoning, a very similar rezoning in Inwood. We, in Inwood, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of members of the community of Inwood, acting in good faith, participated in the ULURP and the EIS process. Calling on the city to study central impacts on the community before proceeding with the rezoning. We call for these to be studied as part of the EIS process. We called, I'm not going to list all of the impacts we called on the city's study, but they included impact being a neighborhood of majority Latino, Latina, Latinx, whatever you call it, and majority of those people are Dominican or Dominican American. Also, almost 100% of the mom and pop businesses in our neighborhood are minority or women in minority-owned businesses. The city point blank refused to study those impacts, and that became the basis of our lawsuit against the city, which we won in December of 2019 when Justice Vernon Saunders held in our favor, and the Inwood rezoning was annulled for almost a year. So I'm speaking from hard-fought, hard-won experience. And I just want to tell everyone here that MIH is a racket, and it does not produce any of the affordable housing. It supposedly produces affordable housing, but does not produce any of the affordable housing which is needed by the people who will be displaced by this majority luxury upzoning. And in fact, in Inwood, I'll speak about a specific project that's Madruga is planning to build at 207th and 9th Avenue. He plans to build a 30-story market rate luxury building for giving away so-called.
Okay, Carla, could you please wrap up your remarks?
People in Inwood who are being displaced by the rezoning. The same issue, it's the same racket. It was created by Brad Lander. He invented it for Bill de Blasio for these rezonings. And this is a racket designed to profit luxury developers, engineered by Lander, who invented it for Bill de Blasio. Vote against this deeply destructive rezoning on all levels. That's all.
Okay, our next speaker is Roy Sloan. Okay, Roy, we're ready for your testimony. Okay, we're going to move on to Lucy Wilcox and then try to get Roy Sloan again.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please proceed.
Great, thank you. Hi, I'm Lucy. I'm a renter, and I moved here to the border of Gowanus and Carroll Gardens about 2 years ago. I walk across the Gowanus Canal where the rezoning is going to happen about every other day, and I'm in full support of the rezone. I chose this neighborhood because of its, great access to amenities like good grocery stores, any type of gym you want, restaurants, and it's accessible to my work via bike lanes and several underutilized subway lines, even before COVID. I love this neighborhood, and I recommend it to pretty much everyone I know who's moving within or to the city. I want more neighbors, and I feel that if we as a community say no to this rezone, we're rejecting 8,000 families that want to be our neighbors, and that's something that I'm personally not okay with. As a renter, rental prices are obviously also really important to me, and New York City has just not been developing nearly enough new housing in the past decade to handle the demand, and new development has been shown to decrease rents in the immediate and general surrounding areas compared to where development did not take place. If we do not build these new units, then people who decide, like me, that they want to move to this great neighborhood will result in displacing existing residents who get priced out. This rezoning is not going to be displacing lots of existing residents. You know, I walk over the Gowanus all the time. I see how underutilized the land is. There's a lot of empty space, a lot of, you know, manufacturing doesn't necessarily need to be there. And I'm really excited to start seeing these empty lots and underutilized lots be replaced by new apartments. Thank you.
Okay, can we try Roy Sloan again? Roy, can you unmute yourself? Okay, we will move on to Stephen Crane.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize you had called on me. I think you said my name a little differently. So I just wanted to say I joined Grassroots Community Coalition Voice of Gowanus to oppose the deeply flawed Gowanus rezoning. And I call on Borough President Eric Adams to vote no. Conditions won't cut it. This rezoning disrespects and endangers the greater Gowanus community. The combined sewer overflow tanks won't be built in time. Displacement will occur. There is still no racial impact study. People will be placed in harm's way and left to face flooding and toxic vapor risks. Developers will get handouts and build far more massively out-of-scale luxury buildings than we want or need. We need truly affordable housing, not luxury housing. The rezoning must not proceed until federal agencies help redo the EIS as legally required. Our city council members and the mayor have sold us out to developers. We ask Borough President Adams to prove he is different, that he is not just a tool of the real estate industry. Vote no on the Gowanus rezoning. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to try Roy Sloan again, if you can unmute yourself. Okay, we have another in-person speaker, Yana Davidova.
Hello, I just would like to address a specific point. Okay, sorry about this. I would like to address a specific point in Environmental Impact Study, Chapter 3, page 17. It's a socioeconomic impact study. It has incorrect information, which greatly diminishes the number of displacements and points to the fact that the study needs to be redone. So here's a quote. There are 3 potentially displaced information sector businesses employing an estimated 27 people on the projected development sites. The information sector businesses are Band Spaces NYC, which is listed as a recording studio. So I'm one of the renters at Band Spaces NYC for the last 6 years. It is not a recording studio, which usually employs maybe a couple of people. It's a large rehearsal space with about over 90 rooms. In each of those rooms, there are musicians, sometimes 2, 3 per room. So you could multiply 90 rooms by 2, 3 people. It's actually going to be around 180 or more people in that whole space. So it is not a recording studio at all. And so the thing is that then this means that the number of displacements will be not 27, as it says in that study, but 27 plus all the renters in that rehearsal space. So why this rehearsal space is important? In a large area of mid-Brooklyn and South Brooklyn, this is the only affordable space for musicians to rent a room for 24 hours, for a whole month, to practice. And for session musicians, professional musicians, having a place to practice is very important for their career, because it is illegal to practice at home. So if the rent will go up and the rehearsal space will become unaffordable, there is going to be no place to practice. So a lot of musicians who rely on that space will be displaced. They might just move out, maybe somewhere to North Brooklyn, maybe somewhere else, because there are no alternatives of the same price in that whole large area of Brooklyn. So because the information is incorrect about the number of displacement, that it is a rehearsal space, this points to the fact that it needs to be redone, the environmental impact study. And I, in general, oppose the rezoning. Thank you.
Do we have any other speakers signed up at this time? Okay, one last time, we'd like to try Roy Sloan, if you're able to unmute yourself. Okay. So I think we'll give it 5 more minutes. And again, we welcome anyone who is watching via WebEx, who's interested in testifying, to submit a request to do so. And also forward your testimony or your remarks to askeric@brooklynbp.nyc.gov. Okay, it appears we have one more speaker. Nick Espinoto. I'm sorry, Nick Esposito. Nick, if you're able to unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Please proceed.
Okay. Hi. Hi, I'm Nick. I'm a lifelong resident of the Gowanus area. If you look at the summary of this meeting, there's 6 bullet points. And the biggest bullet point is a third one that talks about the wonderful affordable housing that is going to be enabled by this. But and that's what everybody seems to talk about when they talk about this. But the first bullet point kind of slips in that it's going to allow the total coverage of the area with huge luxury towers. And I don't think that anybody at all would be advocating for this if that was the only thing that was in this proposal. 30-story luxury towers, 25-story luxury towers are too big for the neighborhood. And if you look at neighborhoods that have been developed in that way, you know, you see a consistency in terms of small businesses being driven out and just a lack of attendance in those neighborhoods. Those luxury towers are often used as investment properties. So I don't understand, as a resident, I don't understand how these two things are linked. Affordable housing is a fundamental good, but why is it linked to, these huge towers? The other thing that I would, so I am against this rezoning. I think it's a scam, starting to use that language. The other thing that I would say is that after Miami, I think that, people should, rethink, these giant buildings. 3rd Avenue and 4th Avenue has a lot of, new buildings, 12, 14 stories. They look big, but they look appropriate. 28 stories is too big. And my last point, there's a major shift going on in the world of work. And there is a massive availability in Manhattan in terms of office spaces. Many office buildings are being repurposed as residential currently. And before we, throw up, so many new giant units, it might be worth looking at repurposing some of that available stock. Thank you.
Okay. We will wait a few minutes for anyone who hasn't spoken yet but is interested in testifying. All right, seeing no further requests to testify, we will now begin to close this hearing.
Calendar item number 1 is closed.
The hearing on this application is now closed. Thank you for participating in this public hearing. Borough President Adams will review the applications heard today and submit his recommendations to the City Planning Commission for further consideration. Borough President Adams would also like to take this opportunity to remind you that the City Planning Commission will hold a public hearing on this item, which will be announced at a later date. Borough President Adams would also like to remind viewers that comments can be submitted by email to askeric@brooklynbp.nyc.gov. This hearing is now adjourned. Thank you.